The first time 19-year-old Emma Collins saw the man she was being forced to marry, he stood at the front of a small church with blood on one sleeve and snow melting from his black coat. He was tall, silent, and hard-faced, with a scar running from his left temple to his jaw. No one in Pine Hollow spoke above a whisper when he entered a room. They called him the Bear of Cold Ridge, and before the preacher finished the first prayer, Emma had already decided she would rather sleep in the barn than share a room with him. Emma stood near the church door in a plain cream dress borrowed from Mrs. Dalton, the woman who owned the boarding house. Her hands shook around a small bunch of winter flowers. Her father had been dead for 6 months, but his debts still followed her like wolves. He had borrowed $400 from Silas Mercer, the richest cattle owner in that part of Colorado. When he died, Silas came to Emma with 2 choices. She could work in his house for 8 years without pay, or she could marry his nephew, Caleb Hart, a mountain rancher who needed a wife. Emma had heard the stories about Caleb. People said he had broken a man's arm during a card game. They said he lived alone above Cold Ridge because even his own family could not stand him. They said he once rode through a blizzard to carry a dead friend home, then never spoke about it again. Some women called him dangerous. Others said he was only cold. Emma did not know which was worse. She had asked Silas why Caleb wanted a wife he had never met. Silas had only smiled and said, "A ranch needs a woman, and a woman in your position needs a roof." Emma hated those words, "a woman in your position." It meant poor, alone, trapped. It meant everyone believed she should be thankful for any life offered to her, even if that life belonged to a stranger feared by half the county. The church was crowded that morning. Snow pressed against the windows and cold wind moved through the cracks in the walls. Emma walked down the aisle alone. No father stood beside her. No brother watched from the front row. Every step felt like another door closing behind her. Caleb did not look at her until she reached the altar. His eyes were gray, darker than the winter sky. The blood on his sleeve came from a cut across his hand, fresh enough to stain the cloth. Emma stared at it before she could stop herself. "Horse threw a shoe on the way down," he said quietly. Those were the first words he ever spoke to her. Emma nodded, but she did not trust her voice. The preacher began. Emma listened to the vows as if they were being spoken to someone else. When it was her turn, she repeated the words clearly, though her chest felt tight. Caleb's voice never shook. He promised to provide for her, protect her, and honor her. Emma almost looked at him when he said the last word. Honor was not something she expected from a marriage bought with debt. When the preacher told Caleb to kiss his bride, the church became so quiet Emma could hear snow sliding from the roof. Caleb turned toward her. She froze. He looked at her face for a long moment, then lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Nothing more. A few people laughed softly. Emma heard Mrs. Walton whisper that the Bear of Cold Ridge must not know what a wife was for. Emma's face burned, but Caleb only turned toward the crowd. "That is enough," he said. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The laughter stopped. After the ceremony, Silas Mercer held a small meal in the church hall. Emma stood near the window while people watched her as if she were part of a traveling show. Caleb remained across the room, speaking to no one. He seemed uncomfortable among the tables, flowers, and smiling faces. He looked more suited to the dark mountains outside. Mrs. Walton came close to Emma with a plate in her hand. She was the wife of the town banker and enjoyed giving advice no one requested. "You must be careful with a man like Caleb Hart," she said. "Keep the house clean, cook what he likes, and do not ask about his past. Men who live alone that long usually have something to hide." Emma looked toward Caleb. He was already watching them. Mrs. Walton followed Emma's eyes and quickly moved away. A few minutes later, Caleb came to Emma's side. "The wagon is ready." Emma picked up the single bag that held everything she owned. Caleb took it from her without asking. "I can carry it," she said. "I know." "Then why did you take it?" His gray eyes rested on her face. "Because your hands are shaking." Emma looked down. He was right, and she hated that he had noticed. Outside, the wind struck like a knife. Caleb helped her onto the wagon seat, then placed a thick wool blanket over her legs. He climbed beside her and guided the horses away from Pine Hollow. For the first hour, neither of them spoke. The road climbed into thick pine woods where snow covered every branch. Emma stared ahead and tried not to imagine what waited at the end of the trail. A dark cabin, a locked room, a husband who believed paying a debt gave him the right to control her. "You can turn back," Caleb said suddenly. Emma looked at him. "What?" "If you want to return to town, say so now." Her heart beat faster, and the debt. "I will pay it." She studied his face, searching for the trick. "Why would you do that?" His hands tightened slightly around the reins. "Because you should have been given a choice." Emma could not answer. Silas had told her Caleb agreed to the marriage. He had made it sound as though Caleb had asked for her. Yet the man beside her sounded almost angry that she had been brought to him. "Why did you marry me?" she asked. Caleb looked toward the white road. "Silas said you would be sent east to work in one of his factories if I refused." Emma felt cold in a way the blanket could not fix. Silas had never mentioned a factory. "So you agreed out of pity?" "No." "Then why?" Caleb was silent for so long she thought he would not answer. "Because I knew what it was like to have someone else decide your future." He said nothing more. They reached the ranch near sunset. It stood in a wide valley below Cold Ridge, surrounded by pine trees and white fields. The house was larger than Emma expected, built of dark logs with a stone chimney and a long porch. A barn stood nearby and warm light glowed through its windows. The place did not look cruel or wild. It looked strong, quiet, carefully kept. A brown dog ran toward the wagon, barking once before stopping beside Caleb. Caleb climbed down and scratched behind its ears. "This is Ranger," he said. "He will follow you everywhere once he decides you belong here." Emma stepped down without help. Ranger came close, smelled her dress, then sat at her feet. "That was quick," Caleb said. Emma almost smiled but stopped herself. Inside, the house was warm. A fire burned in the main room. Fresh bread sat on the table beside a pot of stew. Emma looked around. The floor had been swept. Clean curtains hung over the windows. A small bedroom waited at the end of the hall. Caleb placed her bag inside it. "This room is yours," he said. "My room is across the hall." Emma looked at the bed, then at him. "There is a lock on the inside," he added. "Only you have the key." She stared at him. Caleb reached into his coat and placed a small iron key in her palm. Then he stepped away as if he understood she needed space. "You are safe in this house, Emma," he said, "even from me." He turned to leave, but stopped near the doorway. "There is something on the bed for you," he said. "It is your wedding gift." After he left, Emma closed the door. She looked at the key in her hand, then slowly turned toward the bed. A wooden box rested on the quilt. Her name was carved across the lid. Emma opened it. Inside was her father's silver pocket watch, the one Silas Mercer had taken the day he came to collect the debt. Beneath it lay a folded document bearing Silas's signature. Emma lifted it with shaking hands and read the first line. "The debt of Daniel Collins has been paid in full." She read it again, hardly able to breathe. Then she saw a second paper beneath it, stamped by the county office. It was the deed to 20 acres of land beside Caleb's ranch. The land was in her name alone. Emma stood frozen beside the bed, staring at the papers while tears filled her eyes. She had expected chains. Instead, Caleb Hart had given her freedom. Then she noticed one final item at the bottom of the box. A letter addressed to her in her father's handwriting. Emma recognized her father's handwriting before she opened the letter. The letters leaned slightly to the right, and the words were pressed hard into the paper, as if Daniel Collins had always feared they might disappear unless he forced them to stay. Her knees weakened. She sat on the edge of the bed with the pocket watch in one hand and the letter in the other. "My dear Emma, if you are reading this, then I failed to return home and tell you the truth myself." Emma stopped breathing. The fire cracked softly in the other room. Somewhere outside, a horse struck the barn floor with one hoof. The ordinary sounds made the words in front of her feel even more frightening. "Your mother left you something when she died. 20 acres near Cold Ridge, land that belonged to her family before she married me. I promised I would protect it for you. Silas Mercer found out about it and tried to buy it from me. I refused. Soon after, he offered me a loan when the farm failed. I was foolish enough to accept." Emma's fingers tightened around the paper. The debt was never truly about money. Silas wanted your land. If anything happens to me, do not sign it away. Do not believe him when he says you have no choice. There is one man I trust to help you. Caleb Hart. Emma read the name twice. Caleb knew your mother when they were young. His family once worked beside hers on Cold Ridge. He understands what that land is worth, and he knows why Silas wants it. Caleb is a hard man to know, but he is not a cruel man. If he gives you his word, believe him. Forgive me for leaving you with this burden. Your loving father, Daniel Collins. Emma sat still for a long time. Caleb had not simply paid a debt. He had returned land that already belonged to her. He had found her father's watch and letter. He had known something about her mother that Emma herself had never known. She rose and opened the bedroom door. Caleb was standing near the fireplace, removing the stained coat he had worn to the wedding. A clean bandage covered the cut across his hand. Ranger lay near the fire, watching him. Caleb looked up when Emma entered. She held out the letter. You knew my father. His face changed slightly. Yes. You knew about the land. Yes. You knew Silas wanted it. Caleb looked toward the window before answering. I suspected. Your father confirmed it before he died. Emma's voice sharpened. Then why did no one tell me? I tried. When? 3 months ago, I sent 2 letters to Pine Hollow. I never received them. Caleb's jaw tightened. Silas owns the mail coach contract from the valley. Emma understood. Silas had stopped the letters. She looked down at her father's watch. How did you get this back? I bought it from Silas. With what? A section of timberland on the north slope. Emma stared at him. You gave him land for a watch. For the watch, the letter, and the signed release of your father's debt. You gave him part of your ranch. Yes. Why? Caleb looked at her as if the answer should have been clear. Because they were yours. Emma turned away because tears had filled her eyes again. No one had ever sacrificed something valuable for her without making certain she understood the price. Silas counted every kindness like a coin. Even her father, loving as he had been, had hidden too much until it was too late. Caleb asked for nothing. That frightened her in a different way. What does Silas want with my land? She asked. Caleb moved to the table and opened a rolled map. Come here. Emma stood beside him. The map showed Cold Ridge, the valley, Caleb's ranch, and the 20 acres now carrying her name. A blue line crossed the land. A river, she asked. An underground spring. It reaches the surface near the eastern edge of your property. Emma studied the map. The town's new rail company plans to build a water station in the valley, Caleb continued. Steam engines need water. Whoever controls that spring can charge the railroad. How much is it worth? More than your father ever owed. More than my ranch may be worth. Emma felt anger rise slowly inside her. Silas tried to take it for $400. He expected your father to fail. When Daniel died, Silas expected you to sign the property over to settle the debt. But he offered me marriage instead. Caleb's expression grew cold. Because I forced him to. Emma looked at him. Forced him how? I told him that if he sent you east or tried to take the land, I would bring your father's papers to the county judge. Then why the marriage? Silas would only release the debt if I agreed to it. He believed marriage would keep the land inside the family. He thought I would eventually sell it to him. Emma stepped back. And what did you think? I thought marriage would place you under my legal protection until the deed was secured in your name. So this was only protection. At first, the words hung between them. Emma felt her face grow warm. At first. Caleb looked directly at her. Something uncertain moved through his eyes, then vanished behind the control she had seen in the church. You are tired, he said. You should eat. That is not an answer. No. Then answer me. He was silent for a moment. I had seen you before. Emma frowned. Where? Last winter, Pine Hollow. You were outside the feed store. She remembered the day. Snow had fallen for hours. A small boy had dropped a sack of flour in the street, and the bag had split open. His mother had started crying because she had no money for another. Emma had given them the flour she had bought for herself. "You saw that?" Caleb nodded. "You walked back to the boarding house carrying nothing." "That was months ago." I remembered. "Why?" He looked away. "Because most people protect what little they have. You gave yours away." Emma did not know what to say. Caleb rolled up the map. "The stew will be cold." They ate across from each other at the table. Emma expected the silence to feel uncomfortable, but it did not. Caleb answered when she asked about the ranch. He told her there were 30 cattle, 6 horses, and a mare due to give birth before spring. He told her the snow sometimes closed the road for weeks. He told her where the food was stored and how to use the pump when the pipes froze. After supper, Emma washed the dishes. Caleb carried in wood. Neither asked the other to help. They simply worked. When Emma returned to her bedroom, she did not lock the door. The next morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and fried potatoes. She dressed quickly and went to the kitchen. Caleb stood near the stove, looking uncertain. "You cook?" she asked. "Badly." Emma looked at the black edges of the potatoes. "Honestly, at least." A small sound came from him. It took her a moment to understand. It was almost a laugh. They spent the day learning the ranch. Caleb showed her the barn, the spring house, the chicken shed, and the trail that led to her 20 acres. Ranger followed close behind. The land was covered in snow, but Emma could see tall pines rising along the western edge and a flat meadow opening toward the ridge. Near a group of stones, clear water bubbled from the ground and moved beneath a thin sheet of ice. "This is the spring?" she asked. "Yes." Emma crouched and touched the water. It was colder than anything she had felt. "My mother owned this." "Her family did," Caleb said. "The Collins property was once called Willow Run." Emma smiled faintly. "That sounds kinder than Cold Ridge." It was kinder before Silas arrived. They walked farther until they reached the remains of a small cabin. Only part of the stone fireplace still stood. "Your mother was born here," Caleb said. Emma turned. "How do you know so much about her?" Caleb's face closed again. "My mother knew her." "That is not all." "No." Emma waited. Caleb looked toward the trees. "Your mother saved my life when I was 12. Emma stared at him. "I fell through river ice. She pulled me out and carried me to that cabin. She stayed with me until help came." He paused. "When she died, my mother promised we would protect the land for you. My mother died before she could keep that promise." "So you kept it for her?" "For both of them." A deep sadness moved through his voice. Emma began to see that his silence was not emptiness. It was a place where old pain had been locked away. They returned to the house before dark. That evening, Caleb gave Emma a small book of ranch accounts. "You should see everything," he said. "Income, debts, supplies, all of it. You trust me with this? You are my wife." The word felt different when he said it now. Emma spent 2 hours reading the accounts. Caleb's ranch was strong but not rich. The timberland he had traded to Silas had been worth far more than the debt. Caleb had placed himself in danger to free her. "You cannot keep making sacrifices for me," she said. Caleb sat across from her, repairing a leather strap. "Why not?" "Because I may never be able to repay them." "I did not ask you to." "That does not make it easier." He put the strap down. "Emma, look at me." She did. "You owe me nothing." She wanted to believe him. For the first time, she almost did. 3 days passed. Emma settled into the ranch faster than she expected. She learned Ranger liked to sleep outside her door. She learned Caleb drank coffee without sugar and checked every lock twice before bed. She learned he spoke gently to frightened horses and never raised his voice. On the 4th morning, a rider came through the snow. It was Silas Mercer. Caleb stepped onto the porch before Silas reached the house. Emma stood in the doorway behind him. Silas climbed down from his horse and smiled as though he had come for a friendly visit. "I see the bride survived," he said. Caleb's shoulders hardened. What do you want? Silas removed a folded paper from his coat. A small business matter. Emma stepped forward. You have no business with me. Silas looked at her with calm amusement. That is where you are mistaken. He opened the paper. The deed Caleb gave you is valid, Silas said, but the water beneath the land is not included. Emma felt the cold air strike her lungs. What are you talking about? Caleb asked. Silas smiled. Daniel Collins sold me the water rights 2 weeks before he died. That is a lie, Emma said. Silas held out the paper. Her father's signature was at the bottom. Caleb took the document and read it. His face went still. Emma looked from the paper to Silas. Why come here now? Because the railroad surveyors arrive in 5 days, Silas said, and they will negotiate with the legal owner of the spring. He placed his hat back on his head. Enjoy the land, Emma. I only need the water beneath it. Silas mounted his horse and rode away. Caleb remained on the porch, staring at the paper. Emma moved beside him. Is it real? The signature looks real. Her chest tightened. Then he has one. Caleb read the document again. No, he said quietly. Emma looked at him. Caleb pointed to a line near the bottom of the page. This paper was witnessed by Sheriff Wade Turner. What does that mean? It means Silas made a mistake. Caleb folded the document and reached for his coat. Sheriff Turner died 9 months before the date written here. Emma stared at the dead sheriff's name beneath her father's signature. For the first time since Silas Mercer had arrived, hope pushed through her fear. You are certain? She asked. Caleb was already pulling on his coat. Wade Turner died last winter. Half the county attended his funeral. If this paper was signed 3 months later, it is false. But my father's signature looks real. Silas had other papers Daniel signed. He could have copied it or forced him to sign a blank page before he died. Emma looked toward the road, where Silas had disappeared between the snowy pines. What do we do? We find proof before the railroad men arrive. Caleb went to the barn and saddled 2 horses. He tried to convince Emma to remain at the ranch, but she refused. This is my father's name on that paper, she said. I am coming. The ride to Pine Hollow took nearly 3 hours through heavy snow. Caleb kept close beside her, slowing whenever the trail became dangerous. Emma's hands grew numb despite her gloves, but she did not complain. They reached town shortly after noon and went directly to the county office. The new sheriff, Nathan Brooks, listened as Caleb explained the false document. Nathan examined the signature and the witness line. You are right about Wade, he said. He was buried on March 9th. This paper is dated December 17th. Can you arrest Silas? Emma asked. Not without more proof. He will say he received the paper from Daniel and never checked the date. He created it, Caleb said. I believe you, Nathan answered, but belief is not enough for a judge. Emma remembered her father's letter. He said Silas offered him the loan after learning about the spring. Nathan looked at her. Do you have the original loan agreement? Silas has it. Then we need something else. They searched the county records for the rest of the afternoon. Every deed, loan, and water claim connected to Emma's family was examined. Nothing showed that Daniel had ever sold the spring. Near sunset, the clerk found an old entry in a heavy record book. Here, she said, Daniel Collins registered a written statement 6 months before his death. Emma leaned across the desk. The statement said Daniel Collins would never sell the water rights separately from Willow Run. It also said any later agreement claiming otherwise should be treated as false unless witnessed by Judge Samuel Price. Caleb looked at Emma. Your father knew Silas might try this. Where is Judge Price? She asked. The clerk's face darkened. He left Pine Hollow last year. Silas told everyone he moved to Kansas. Nathan closed the record book. He did not move to Kansas. Everyone turned toward him. Nathan explained that Judge Price had disappeared after accusing Silas of changing land records. Silas claimed the old judge had left town in shame. Most people believed him because Price had no family nearby. "Do you know where he went?" Caleb asked. "No, but Wade Turner was investigating before he died." Emma felt the room grow colder. "How did Sheriff Turner die?" Nathan hesitated. His horse came back without him. They found his body below Red Pine Pass. "An accident?" Emma asked. "That is what Silas called it." Caleb's expression became hard. Nathan led them into the old sheriff's office. Wade's personal papers were still locked inside a metal cabinet because no one had known what to do with them. They searched until night covered Pine Hollow. At the bottom of the cabinet, Emma found a small leather notebook. Most of the pages held ordinary reports, but the final entry mentioned Silas Mercer, Judge Price, and an abandoned mining cabin beyond Eagle Rock. The last line was unfinished. "Price alive, hidden for his safety. Mercer must not find him before court." Caleb closed the notebook. "We ride at first light." Emma and Caleb stayed at Mrs. Dalton's boarding house that night. Emma barely slept. Before dawn, she heard Caleb moving in the hallway and opened her door. He was dressed for the cold, with a rifle across his back. "Caleb." He stopped. "What happens if Silas reaches Judge Price first?" "He will not." "You cannot promise that." "No," he said, "but I can promise I will do everything I can to bring the judge back safely." Emma stepped closer. "I am coming with you." "The pass is dangerous. So is leaving my future in other people's hands." Caleb studied her face, then nodded. They reached Eagle Rock before noon. Snow covered the narrow trail, and the wind screamed through the trees. The old mining cabin stood in a hollow between two cliffs. Caleb dismounted first. The cabin door opened before they reached it. An old man with white hair pointed a rifle at them. "State your names." "Caleb Hart," Caleb said. "This is Emma Collins Hart." The rifle lowered slightly. "Daniel's girl." Emma stepped forward. "You knew my father." Judge Samuel Price opened the door. Inside, the cabin was cold and poorly supplied. Price looked thin, but his mind was clear. He told them Silas had tried to force him to approve false water claims. When Price refused, Silas threatened his life. Sheriff Turner helped him escape and promised to return with evidence. Wade never returned. Price opened a wooden chest and removed several documents. One was the original water deed for Willow Run. Another was a signed statement from Daniel Collins, explaining that Silas had tried to buy the spring and had threatened to take Emma's home if Daniel refused. The final paper was a copy of Silas's false claim, prepared months before Daniel's death. "This proves everything," Emma whispered. "It proves enough," Judge Price said. A gunshot struck the cabin wall. Caleb pulled Emma to the floor. Silas's voice came from outside. "Send out the papers, Price." Judge Price went pale. "He followed you." Caleb looked through a crack beside the window. Silas stood near the trees with two armed men. "You take Emma through the back," Caleb told Price. Emma grabbed his arm. "No." "Listen to me. I will not leave you." Caleb held her gaze. "Your father protected those papers with his life. Get them to Nathan." Before Emma could answer, horses sounded on the ridge. Sheriff Nathan Brooks appeared with 4 riders from Pine Hollow. Caleb had sent a message before leaving town, telling Nathan where they were going. Silas's men dropped their weapons. Silas tried to run, but his horse slipped in the snow. Nathan reached him before he could stand. By sunset, Silas Mercer was locked inside the Pine Hollow jail. Judge Price examined every document publicly the following morning. The false water deed was rejected. Silas was charged with forgery, fraud, threatening a judge, and involvement in Sheriff Turner's death. The railroad representatives arrived 2 days later. They offered Emma a large sum for full control of the spring. She refused. Instead, she agreed to lease only enough water for the station while keeping ownership of the land. The payment would provide a steady income for the ranch for many years. When the agreement was signed, Emma returned to Cold Ridge with Caleb. Spring came slowly to the mountains. Snow melted from the meadow, and Willow Run turned green. Emma planted flowers near the remains of her mother's cabin. Caleb repaired the fireplace and began rebuilding the walls. One evening, Emma found him placing a new beam across the roof. "What are you making?" she asked. "A house. We already have a house. This one belongs to your land." She watched him climb down. "For whom?" "For whoever needs it someday," he said. "A family member, a traveler, a child who wants a place of her own." Emma smiled. "A child." Caleb looked uncertain for the first time in weeks. "Someday," he said. Emma stepped close and took his hand. "Someday sounds good." They walked back toward the ranch as the sun lowered behind Cold Ridge. Ranger ran ahead, stopping every few feet to make certain they were still following. At the porch, Emma looked toward the bedroom window where Caleb's wedding gift had waited on her first night. The pocket watch was now kept beside her bed. The deed remained locked safely in the desk. But the greatest gift had never been the watch, the land, or even the paid debt. It had been the key. On the day she had expected to lose every choice she had left, Caleb had placed freedom in her hand. He had given her a door she could lock, land no husband could take, and the right to leave if she wished. Because he gave her the freedom to leave, she had freely chosen to stay. Emma turned toward him. "I was terrified of you on our wedding day," she said. "I know. I thought you were going to make me your prisoner." His expression filled with pain. "I would never have done that." "I know that now." She took the small iron key from her pocket. She had carried it since their wedding night. "I do not need this anymore." Caleb looked at the key, then at her. "Keep it." "Why?" "So you always remember the door is yours." Emma closed her fingers around it. Then she rose on her toes and kissed him beneath the warm light of the porch lamp. Caleb wrapped his arms around her carefully, as though she were still something precious he could not believe had chosen him. Beyond them, the spring flowed freely through Willow Run. And for the first time in her life, Emma did not feel owned by debt, fear, or another person's plans. She was 19 years old. She had a home, land, and a future. Most of all, she had a husband who had never asked her to belong to him. He had simply made her safe enough to choose where she belonged.